there, it's Jaime Alejandro, and this is the Arts Calling podcast, the place where I interview hardworking independent creatives in the literary, visual, and performing arts. Before we get the show on the road, I want to throw in a quick reminder. Please do me a favor and stop by the weekly shout-out links in the episode description. This is an amazing opportunity to discover your favorite independent artist, whether it's a new novel, a new podcast, a new show, anything and everything. The sky's the limit. I'm throwing in there friends of the show, Arts Calling guests, and obviously independent projects that we're working on over at the Coalition. There's so much fun stuff, and I hope that you stop by and support independent artists. Just take a good look in there and you will see that there's a whole bunch of amazing people doing phenomenal things in the fringes, the independent way, the DIY route, and they're doing a phenomenal job. And with my now familiar rant out of the way, let me introduce you to our guest. Today, I'm delighted to be Arts Calling Nathalie Miranda. And here's a bit about our guest. With an arsenal of genre-bending singles under her belt, London-based powerhouse pop star Nathalie Miranda performs straight from the heart. Blending soul, blues, and classic rock into high-energy retro pop, Nathalie rocks out with unbridled passion, showcases a stellar octave range, and leaves it all on the stage. Nathalie's star continues to rise in 2024, with her smash hits Catch-22 and Soul on Fire hitting 250,000 Spotify streams each, with more than 200,000 YouTube views combined. Her unique artistry and shimmering vocals prove she's the UK's answer to the US powerhouse divas. She was featured in Wonderland magazine, Rolling Stone India, previously performed on BBC's Later with Jules Holland as a backing vocalist, and has headlined iconic London venues like the Troubadour. Beyond her spotlight as a solo pop artist, Nathalie has written lyrics and melodies across dance and house music since 2017. Working with international producers who crave her 90s diva vocals, Nathalie has built her reputation as a multi-hyphenate artist free from creative boundaries. Nathalie's dazzling sound is ever-evolving, full of passion, heart, and Greek Cypriot spirit. Follow Nathalie Miranda for updates and new music. So there you have it, folks. Please do yourselves a favor and stop by the links in the episode description and discover Nathalie's music. You will be wowed. It's going to be a wonderful time for you. And as you listen to this conversation, you're going to find out the kind of person that Nathalie is, persevering, incredibly talented, and really committed craftsperson who is working on her own terms and creating work that is truly independent but of tremendous quality. So I walked away feeling deeply inspired, and I hope you will be inspired too. Now, without further delay, let's give Nathalie a call. Hey, Nathalie, thank you so much for your time. How are you?
I'm good, Jaime. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat this morning. I know, well, actually, it's morning for me. It's afternoon for you.
It's afternoon over here, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I have so many things to ask you. I've been listening to your music on repeat for the last couple of days, since we decided to chat. And I do want to get to the music, but I usually like to begin at the very beginning with how you make your way into this crazy business of music. But we could even go further, and I guess I'm curious how life in London was when you first started growing up, and what was family like during those times.
Okay, that's a cool question. So I grew up in a Greek Cypriot household, and my parents love music. They love culture. They love languages and everything. So I grew up in a very multicultural house. My mum is a music fan, and I grew up listening to everyone from Julio Iglesias to Whitney, Elvis, anyone you can think of, my mum used to play. And I think she's partly responsible for my eclectic tastes. But yeah, I mean, growing up in London, it's it's a pretty competitive place. And when I decided to get into music, it was I don't have anyone in my family that's been in the industry, so I was just going blind. I didn't know what I was doing, kind of just guesswork. I mean, in sort of at that time, you had to kind of send CDs off, or for demos and things like that, and it was a lot harder to kind of put yourself in front of people. But yeah, it's a pretty difficult city. There's just everyone comes to London. All the musicians come to London for that reason, to get work and to like get discovered or whatever. So, but yeah, in terms of family, I've been very lucky. My parents have always been really supportive of my crazy ambition.
Yeah.
um,
Well,
and
that's good to hear.
yeah.
Usually you hear the complete opposite of that, where the family just isn't supportive in the slightest. But I think having an
Mm.
understanding family really allows you to open up, and maybe that helped you take your time to figure out that this is what you were interested in. I've been hearing this story a couple of times in some of your interviews about the famous karaoke session. Maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit, because it's a lovely story, and I think it sort of exemplifies this idea that you just need to give it some time to allow yourself to open up and be ready for the right circumstances. Maybe you were trying to tell yourself something really, really important there that night.
Yeah, I really like the way you put that actually. So it's I've always known I wanted to be a performer and a singer, but I was a very shy kid, and it took a really long time and a lot of kind of building up to this moment at this karaoke night on holiday when I was 15, where I decided if I don't get up and sing now, I'm just going to end up singing in my room for the rest of my life, which is what I was doing up to that point, just singing in my room with the radio turned up. Um, and I really decided it had to be that night. And I was so nervous. I asked my mum, who doesn't sing, to get up and sing before me. And she was like, what? And bless her, she got up and she did, what did she do? Like a Doris Day song or something. It was the only thing she knew at that point. And she did it. And I kind of thought, okay, right, she's done this. I'm now going to get up and sing Hopelessly Devoted to You from
Hmm.
Greece. And I had my back to the audience. I was just terrified, and I was holding the mic like really close to me and sort of hugging myself. And I I just kind of closed my eyes and sang, and not expecting anything, but the audience literally stood up and clapped. And my family was shocked because they didn't know I could sing or that it was even a thing that I wanted to do. But it was a real turning point for me because, like, being so shy and insecure and self-conscious, doing it really just gave me the kick I needed to show me that I can do it. And like now I have to just go away and really work hard and just get the songs and work on my skills and things like that. And that's what I did, and I haven't stopped.
And it's a delight for us because the music you're putting out is tremendous, and I really admire
Oh,
your ability to just leapfrog from one genre to another. That's really interesting to me because it just speaks to how honest you are to yourself about what you're interested in. And I think, every creative, especially independent people, should be pursuing it in such a way, because I just have a lot of strong opinions about sort of DIYing things and doing it yourself. But there's one thing, if we may come back to this point that you were addressing here. There was a post that you had on Instagram a little while back where it was like you were switching modes, right? You went from diva mode to shy Natalie, and I'm curious if we could
oh
elaborate a
yeah.
little bit, because that's just like the epitome of performer, like you get into performer mode. But like I just feel like maybe I'm thinking about it a lot because I'm explaining it to my son, who's very reserved, much like I was, and I used to get on stage and I studied acting and things like that. But I'm like, just wait a little bit, you'll get there. But we still have this mode, right? Where we are just kind
Yes.
of turning it on. And maybe you can describe to me what that is, because I think you did a great job in the post as well, explaining it.
I think what it is, when you're on stage, you're obviously performing these songs, whether you're performing covers or your own material, you're taking on a persona. You have the responsibility of conveying the message to the audience. You've got to act a little bit. You can't just stand there because that's just like, boring. Um, but it also sort of gets rid of your inhibitions because you're actually not really yourself. So even when I'm performing my own music, it's coming from me and it's my experiences or my observations or whatever. But Nathalie Miranda, the girl that sits here having an interview with you now, on my bed, kind of chilled out, is totally different to Nathalie Miranda on stage, who's full of more confidence, who does weird singer faces and dances around in a way that I, sitting here, would never do. I made a lot of people say in interviews that I'm quite confident, but inside I'm kind of going, oh my God, what do I say? What do I say? Kind of thing, and I don't want to say the wrong thing, or I don't want to stumble or anything like that. I don't know what it is. I feel like for me, it's a way of expressing myself in a way that normal, everyday Nathalie can't really do. I'm still a very shy person. I'm a very private person, still a little bit insecure about certain things, but put me on a stage with a band, and as soon as that music starts, it's a whole different ball game. So
Yeah, and I totally get what
yeah,
you mean. It's sort of the music granting you permission, right,
yes,
to
yeah,
be that next level, or to have that ability to express yourself in a way that's just not sort of a default
yeah.
setting. And it's really interesting, but you can see it, especially talking to you now. The performances you put on are magnificent, but they're big, energetic, epic, and
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, because there's points of reference here that you're drawing performance wise to people that I really admire, like maybe I'm going to start here. I'm going to ask you about the great Freddie Mercury, and when you sort of latched on to Freddie Mercury, like many of us
Okay.
did, because it's you had mentioned that he was a big influence on you.
He has been. I mean, I was very young when he died. I think I was maybe 7 or 8. But I remember my mum playing Queen in the house. And I remember watching the news broadcast saying that he died. So, and I remember not knowing what he looked like, but hearing them playing their music and going, "Oh my God, that's the guy, isn't it? That's the guy I like. That's the guy that I like to listen to." Um, he's just, and obviously growing up, he became more of an influence as I got older. I admire obviously his talent, his vocals, but more of the kind of person side of him. He was also an introvert. I've read so many books about him, and seen so many interviews. And he on stage he was a different person, the best performer in the world, and didn't wasn't scared of taking risks. He didn't care what anyone thought of him. He just did it.
Mhm.
If someone was going to criticize him, he didn't care. He just did it because that's what he wanted to explore. Whether it's in his personal life or on stage artistically, he wanted to live his life to the fullest. And I really admire his bravery in his songwriting and his interviews and just everything. And I feel a kind of affinity with him, having read so much about him. And
Mhm.
funnily enough, I also reached out to a guy called um, Peter. I've forgotten his surname now, but he was one of their roadies. He was Queen's
Oh.
roadie, Peter Hintz, and he's a good friend of mine now. And I've been to his house, and he's got all this memorabilia, and he's told me so many things about
Oh, that's
those
great.
days, and it's great to hear so much about Freddie from someone who was there. And I love him even more now, because I feel like, if we ever met, I think we'd have got on really well.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, there's so many things I want to ask you about this. Maybe I'm belaboring this point, but do you feel like there is a connection with Freddie as a multicultural person, who really did seem to bring some of his own culture into the music? Has that been sort of like a marker where you say, I think the way to be genuine is to be fusing who you are and
Yes.
and sort of like culturally, and bringing it into I guess a sector that might not feel too comfortable, at first, but then you realize, oh, it's me all along. I just have to sort of morph
Yeah.
my environment and bring in my culture. Maybe I'm projecting too
Yeah.
much, but I don't know. I think it's important to think about.
No, I think so. Also, I mean, I was born in London, and Freddie was born in Zanzibar. But I'm from a I'm Greek Cypriot. I'm not English, so being brought up in a multicultural house in a Greek household, with so many influences, Spanish music being played, French music, everything, and um, you kind of and also obviously living in London, I've never really felt comfortable in London, even though I've been here my entire life. I feel like
Mm.
I should be somewhere a little bit more I don't know. It's very multicultural here, obviously, but somewhere a little bit more kind of accepting or exotic or something like that. I've never really felt like I fit in, and I don't think Freddie felt like he really fit in anywhere either. So yeah, I've never thought about that, but that's a really good way of thinking about it for sure.
Yeah, and I'm curious about that because normally, maybe it's an American thing where we're just constantly thinking about how the culture is just like constantly clashing and blending and creating, like a new
Yeah.
culture. But I'm fascinated by the performances that you've done in different languages. I also think that's a phenomenal thing that we get to enjoy about your music. But also, did you I just learned this morning as I was getting ready for the interview. You learn translation, right? You study translation in school, is that right?
I have a master's in translation, yes, in Spanish and French translation. Greek obviously is, it's what I've been brought up speaking, but Spanish and French I've been speaking since I was 7 or 8 at school. And as I grew
Oh,
up, I
wow.
realized I loved both of them. I love languages. If I had the opportunity, I would learn like loads of them. They come very easily to me. And I feel like when I wrote my Greek song Hilia Simadia and released it a couple of years ago, it was something very important to me because I want people to know that that's where I'm from. Obviously, having a very English accent and not having a Greek name, stage name, it's you lose your identity a little bit. And I wanted people to know it's where I'm from and it's what I'm very proud of. And I love Greek music. Um, and releasing Terremoto last year, my reggaeton song. Again, I wanted people to know that I love the Latin culture. I've danced all the rhythms. I studied the rhythms for many years as a dancer, and I love it. I just wanted to share my love of that with people as well. And I'm actually releasing a French song later this year, which I've
Oh,
written as
wow.
well. So I love just mixing it up, and I'm glad that you enjoy it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I also think it's a wonderful challenge because it's not like you're thinking in a different language, but it does sort of push your sense of understanding and maybe messes with your songwriting in a positive way. Maybe it does sort of like stir the pot a little bit. So, do you feel like you see songwriting differently, not just because you're doing it in different languages, but just in terms of the malleability of language, like what are your thoughts on how it's affecting your songwriting?
When you write in a different language, you obviously have to think in a different way because certain structures are different. For example, writing in Spanish, it's a lot more wordy than English, you know, um, and you have to try and be a lot more to the point. And whereas in English, you can speak a little bit more, explain it a bit more, kind of thing. And I don't know. It's really interesting to me to put a different hat on, and just see where it goes. And I actually wrote the Spanish song, all of it myself, and I got it
Mm.
checked by a native speaker, and they were like, "This is great."
Give it the
So I was
thumbs
like,
up.
"Yay!" you know. um, but yeah, no, I just write it. I don't necessarily think, right, I've got to write as a Greek person or as a Spanish person. It just comes out, and I just, as long as it's kind of cohesive, then I'm happy.
Yeah. So how does that songwriting process work for you then? Maybe we can talk about this, especially with the new one. You Got Soul is man, that song is great. It just comes at you
Oh,
and it's
thank
so
you.
much fun. But again, like some of the genre theme choices are very much up my alley because you're sort of harkening back to 70s sort of
Yes.
sensibilities and your voice totally fits in there. It really belongs in these kind of more expressive kinds of realms. But say for instance, for You Got Soul, can you tell me about how that process was to bring the song to life as a song? And then maybe we can talk about production because it's a great track.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. So You Got Soul is actually from a body of work I wrote back in 2006. We wrote a 12-track album, and that was one of the songs. And they were very basic demos. All these years later, we decided to redo it. So my producer, who's also my husband, kind
Hmm.
of sat there and reworked it, put some like obviously some more modern sounds on it, and it is what it is today. But what it is, it's based on the fact that at the time I was working at an estate agent's and I got fired for no reason,
Hmm.
literally no reason. And I was devastated at the time. But then a few days later, I thought, you know what, I'm going to put this into a song. So that's what you hear in the second verse. There's a girl that I know so well trying to break this wicked spell because, you know, she lost her job apparently for nothing. And I thought, but hey, I'm not going to let it get me down because something good is going to come around. I'm sure of it. And You Got Soul was kind of like, as long as you've got soul, it doesn't matter what happens in your life. If you break up with your partner or if you lose the job or whatever, it doesn't matter. As long as you've got soul, everything's going to be fine. So it's a feel good song, and it's about resilience and just because, I mean, Lord knows I've had enough rejection in my life. You've
Hmm.
got to become thick skinned and resilient
Right.
in this game. So that's what it's about. It's just a fun track, and the 70s sound just kind of was part of that demo album. So we stuck with that and just funked out.
And funked out you did. And I'm it seems like your husband did a phenomenal job. And if he's been producing your work for all this time, he's done
Yes,
a
he
great
has.
job
Yeah.
joining you through the sort of like the musical journey of various genres. There's I want to talk about
Thank
all the other
you.
songs too, but you wrote this I guess it's more like your tagline on Instagram where you said, "I make music for underdogs."
Yes.
And I love that phrase. It is such an inspiring phrase, but can you tell me why that phrase? Just front and center. I really would like you to maybe elaborate on the last point that you were making.
Okay, sure. So I actually only put that on my profiles recently, but
Hmm.
it's been a theme of my songwriting for as long as I can remember. Even before I kind of got into the music game, I would never win anything. I would never get picked for things at school. I never really won anything in awards or whatever, just nothing. And I kind of throughout my life, I've had that kind of, I think people have underestimated me or not really taken me seriously. And then when I really got into songwriting, I kind of thought I'm going to channel all of this into my songs to let people know that it's okay to be who you are. And I wanted to empower people the way I was empowered by the artists that have inspired me. Um, never give up is something I say a lot, and it's obviously easier said than done, but I think as long as you believe in yourself, it doesn't really matter what other people think of you because you can't please everyone.
Mhm.
And my music, especially from let me think, from Battle Scars onwards, so from 2021 onwards, has really been really strong on the empowerment front because there's a lot of people that aren't taken seriously, a lot of people that sort of go by the wayside. People don't give them a chance. And that I think is the underdog. And I think I embody that as a person very well because I've been there. I'm still there. I
Mhm.
still don't get the opportunities other people do. I have to really fight to get anything.
Mhm.
But that's fine, fine, whatever. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. But if I can inspire people through my music, then that's great for me.
That's incredible, and it is a fight. It's a real dogfight. It seems to get the
Yeah,
slightest sliver of interest and attention. But
yeah.
I'm curious if there has been a time in your career when you've literally considered stepping away for good, where you said, "What am I doing? How can I make this compatible with a good life, with the rest of my life?" And what sort of got you out of that situation, if there has been?
I've been there many times, at least 3 times this year alone. um, but I mean, over the years, I've had full-time jobs as well, and I've had to work the music around the full-time job. I've had part-time jobs. I've had everything. But for the past 4 years, I've been full-time music. Um, And it's been great because it's allowed me to really just focus on the music. But on the downside, it kind of shines a light on everything too much. And you kind of end up thinking, oh my God, I haven't been played on this radio station, or I haven't done this yet, or why haven't I been performing at this show? You see all the things that you haven't achieved, as well as the few things that you may have achieved. And then you start thinking, am I good enough? Maybe I should just quit. Maybe I should just get another full-time job and just stop this ridiculousness, but then you just keep thinking, well, no, my thing at the moment is I've got a lot of people to prove wrong. And I know that might sound a bit petty, but because of the sheer amount of rejection and no's I've had over the years, I've got it in me that I have to prove people wrong. Now, whether or not I ever get the chance to do so, I don't know, but it's a fire in me. And I want people to say, oh, hey, congrats. And for me to go, why are you talking to me? You didn't want to know me a couple of years ago or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm Greek. I'm over dramatic as well. So, but that's where I am at. And every time I want to give up, there's this voice in the back of my head that goes, don't do it, because it's coming. Your time is coming. And it may be a little crazy voice, but I'm listening to it.
Yeah, but I think you're striking a good balance here, especially from getting to see your stuff that you're posting online. You understand that it's whatever happens or not, you're enjoying the ride and the pursuit of something, and the work that you're bringing out because of those emotions and that intent is a worthwhile thing, and it's bringing joy to a tremendous number of people. But it is difficult to reconcile. It's like, maybe I should hang it up, but I think it's my understanding that this is probably going to be a part of your life forever. I mean, it's not just about, I'm going to make this thing and I'm going to prove everyone wrong, but you're sticking with it because you don't have a choice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So let's talk about some of the production, because I am fascinated with this, and you've expressed some discontent about the recording process, or maybe the act of really getting it done, in the studio. So could you elaborate a bit about that relationship with your husband and how you work on these productions behind the scenes?
Okay, so the song will come about usually by me writing a melody and lyrics, and then I'll take it to my husband and he'll put some music down and begin the production around it. And that's always really fun, seeing the song come to life from nothing. And he's got a real understanding of what I want. I can just go, do more of the thing, and he'll go, okay, and he'll just know what I'm talking about, But recording vocals for me is something I don't enjoy so much. Having the headphones on, having to, like, obviously it's got to be your best performance because it's going down on record kind of thing. And I'm a perfectionist, probably over perfectionist. So I'll do a lot of takes and my husband will be like, that was great. And I'm, no, we'll do it again. Or sometimes he'll say, no, do it again. And I'll go, no, that was great. So it's just, it's this constant kind of like, this kind of to and fro. But I don't like recording, and it's a bit of a weird thing to say coming from a singer, but I much prefer being in a live environment because I feed off it a lot more. But you've got to go to the studio, of course. So I kind of get in a zone and just focus as much as I can, and I've got my kind of herbal teas and my little comforts. But, once the lead vocal is done, I relax a little bit. We then go with the backing vocals, the harmonies, or whatever it might be. That's quite fun, especially stacking can be quite fun. Yeah, so that's my experience, and then my husband will go away and mix the track and make it sound amazing.
Although it must be nice to have that shorthand with them. I'm curious of moments when you have had some disagreements about what the song's supposed to be, or have you seen your song change from what you thought it was to maybe like him transforming it to something else? Has there been a benefit or a positive in when a song has taken a different turn?
Yeah, there's been a bit of that, especially with Battle Scars. I had a different chorus. The chorus melody was essentially the same, but it did a kind of different movement. And I sang it to him, and he was like, "No, that kind of doesn't work. Let's
Hmm.
cut the sentences shorter." And I went, "No, it's got to be like this." And then we recorded it, and I was like, "Okay, actually, you were right. It sounds better like this." um, I mean, I'm always open to discussion, but if I'm very sure about something, then I don't let it go because I'm the one that's written it and I know where it comes from and what it's meant to be and that kind of thing.
Right.
But he is right some of the time. I'll give him that.
No, that's about right. As a husband, I completely understand what you mean. But I got to say that's a great song. That's probably my favorite song you guys have done.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
again, so full of energy, and it's just propelling forward. And in contrast to You Got Soul, I mean, it is sort of in like similar, like time periods, but they're so vastly
Yes,
different. What's
yes.
sort of a genre that you're sort of like itching to get done or to look forward to in a song?
I
Or
mean,
if you
I
think
just
that
love
way.
so many
Yeah.
genres. Yeah, no, no. I mean, I have a huge backlog of songs that I want to record, but and I we're going to also re-record a lot of the songs that the album that You Got Soul came from. So there will be certainly some more 70s funk throwbacks. Um, but for example, I've written a kind of reggae chill out song. So that's going to be rearing its head at some point. I love the 80s as well. It's my favorite decade.
Hmm.
And Is This Love was my sort of tribute to the 80s, but I'd love to go into that a little bit more, maybe a different side of the 80s pop world. So there's so much I want to do. And even some 90s, maybe some 90s uh, kind of dancey music, maybe. I've done a lot of dance vocals for other producers internationally, but something of my own would be quite cool, I think.
Right. Yeah, and I was curious to ask you about that too, because the songwriting process has to be completely different from what you normally do, for your own music. Could you elaborate a bit on that? Because
Yeah.
I think it sounds like there's a drastic difference when in those features than versus when you're doing your own. But I'm sort of ignorant on the way that the process works. So yeah, if you could maybe break it down a bit.
Yeah, sure. So the majority of those dance collaborations I've been sent the track by the producer and
Mm,
asked to write a top line. Most of the time, they don't give me a particular subject, but sometimes they might say we want it to be positive or about love or whatever. Um, but with these songs, what they're after is a kind of 90s diva vibe. So I reference and use 90s club songs as inspiration. And generally they talk about put your hands up or, like be free and all that kind of stuff. And I say the same thing many different ways, basically, in these
yeah.
dance songs.
Yeah, that's
um,
that's got to be a unique challenge
yeah,
though. Yeah.
it can be. And then you find yourself,
To narrow it down.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to narrow it down. And you kind of find yourself sometimes plagiarizing yourself and you're like, oh no, I can't do that because I said that in the other song. So you've got to find another way to say it. But it's not my favorite thing to do, but it's been really fun working with different producers and writing in a way that I would sort of not really write for myself. I'm kind of a little bit more expressive. I like to write verses, pre-choruses, choruses, things like that. And they've been good for me because from one, loads more came because once these dance songs were released, they heard me, they got in touch with me and wanted me on their song. So it's been kind of cool, and it's kind of an ongoing thing, really. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, for sure. It sort of allows you to switch your hat, from one
Yes,
type to another. But that leads me to ask you about what you think defines an expressive song for a vocalist. Like what are you looking for, or maybe as you're constructing one, what what are you putting in there in terms of how you're structuring it, and what things do you think have to be part of that recipe for you to really get what you're looking for?
sure. So I'm very old school in the way I write. I actually sometimes still use pen and paper as well. um, I I like the songs I love have verses, pre-choruses, choruses, a big middle eight, and then a chorus and an outro. And that's what I try to stick to. You Got Soul is probably the only anomaly there because it's kind of like a funk track, a dance track. But I like to tell the story. And even when I write, I start from the beginning. It's very rare that I'll write a chorus before I write the verse because I like to see the kind of the progression of whatever it is I'm talking about. So I can know that it makes sense to whoever's listening to it. Yeah, and I middle eights especially are quite fun for me. So you can switch it a bit. You can change the key maybe, or just completely change the vibe in a middle eight. And that's what I grew up loving, listening to these big ballads or sort of crazy rock tunes. And yeah.
No, that's wonderful. And you kind of lead me to think about this thing that I guess it's been on my mind a whole bunch, but just the idea that the structures themselves are the language, right? Like they're the vehicle for what you want to say. And I know that there's a lot of people who resist, right, the structure. And I guess maybe I'm seeing the equivalent in playwriting, right? Where, people just refuse to embrace that structure. But it seems like in your environment or maybe in the scenes that you're in, that's a pretty standard thing. It's like, if you know what you got to do, you got to use the message of the structure, or you got to use the vehicle of the structure, right, to get that message out. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I do stick to the structure, but sometimes, for example, in my song Echoes, I didn't have a pre-chorus too, because I felt it would drag too much. So you make these little changes, these little tweaks here and there. But essentially, yes, I do stick to that structure.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Echoes, because that one is a very personal song, isn't it? It's one that you've mentioned is very special. So maybe you could tell me about that one, because I love what you had to say about that one, for sure.
Sure. I actually wrote that when I was really ill. I had some flu thing and I was feeling sorry for myself, and I thought, well, this is the perfect opportunity to write a song about the struggles I had growing up, basically. And it kind of came out of me. It just flowed. And I wanted to write something as older, I'm making myself sound really old, older Nathalie, looking back at younger Nathalie and forgiving the mistakes that she made and the silly things that she thought about herself and that kind of thing. So it's a song about forgiveness, essentially, and acceptance. You're sort of still haunted by those voices that say, oh, you're not good enough, or you're not pretty enough, or whatever it might be. But you can control them now because you're older, you're more experienced, and you know that you are worthy, and you deserve love and success, and you deserve everything that you want, basically. And you have accepted what's happened, but you moved on from it. And I think once you've got that you get that sense of release. So I did, writing it. It was like, actually, yeah, this is fine. I am who I am today because of what I experienced growing up. And it may have been quite negative at times, but it's given me a different perspective now. I'm an adult. And actually recording it was very emotional as well. But yeah, it was a good experience, and it's a fan favorite, thankfully, because it's a very special song for me.
That's great to hear. It's a wonderful track, and it is moving for sure, just because I feel like it encompasses some of the things that you've talked about as well, at least in my mind. The idea that you need time to look back on the scope of your life. You get a little bit more context, and you've spoken a bit, and sorry I'm digressing a little bit. You've spoken about ageism in the past, and I find it so tragic that this is the case in a lot of these entertainment industries, because a song like Echoes wouldn't exist if it weren't for somebody who has the wherewithal and the acquired knowledge to look back on on their life. And I just think it's an important thing that you're doing to address that and to talk about these things openly, because it's like a secret. It's like people age, people get a little
I
bit
know,
older, and it's
I know, right? But I find it incredible. I mean, more recently with Kylie Minogue, when she had her hit last year with Padam Padam, Kylie's 55, right? And obviously in the industry, this is ancient. This is like really old, pension age kind of thing, but she's like thriving. She's better than ever. And she sounds great. The songs are great. Why is this a problem? Like, she wasn't being played on mainstream radio over here.
hmm
And it was a conscious decision. She's too old, we're not playing her. And there was this massive outcry. There was like, why are you not playing this woman? She's been in the business for like 40 years.
hmm
Why? And I think Madonna may have the same issue as well. It's insane that
hmm
that they're still writing great music. They're still touring. The demand is still there. Why is there a problem with an older woman and older men as well being an artist? What's the problem? I
Right.
can't, I just can't understand it. And I I do try to address it as much as I can, because it's just crazy. It shouldn't matter if you're 25 or 55. As long as the music's good and you've got fans, what's the problem?
Exactly. Exactly. But one of the great things about the way that you do business and you operate your entire enterprise as an independent artist is the fact that you're embracing all of the channels of communication and you're getting out to the people directly. What are some things that you have learned along the way in terms of running your business? Because as much as we hate to say it, on the track that you're on, this has been sort of like a business endeavor. What are some
Yes.
things that you would do differently, on a strategic level to be more efficient as an independent artist where you're at?
Interesting question. Different things to be more efficient. Let's see. Um, I think I think maybe making earlier use of social media, because for instance, with Instagram, I've had it for many years, but I didn't really start using it um, properly till about 2020, 2019.
Mhm.
Obviously, in 2020, we all went there. But you know, had I been using it the way I'm using it now in the earlier days, I might have had different opportunities. I don't know. I'm still a little bit scared of it, to be honest. I don't really enjoy social media. Like I said, I'm a private person, and I realize we need it as artists. And I'm so grateful for all the opportunities it's brought my way. Um, but I do find it quite overwhelming, especially with all the different apps that keep coming out, and you have to use them. And you know, you have to post X amount of times a day and all this kind of stuff. And you have to kind of just find your happy medium. And I think I've found mine. And if I don't post every day, doesn't matter. It's not really going to make a difference. Um, but yeah, I think that would have made a difference if I'd started using it a little bit more productively earlier on, I think.
Right. And that's such a tough thing. And it's a common point of conversation here at Arts Calling because I'm so wary of it and it goes on and off my phone. I delete Instagram and install it probably 3 times a week just because I feel like, okay, I gotta post, I guess, to let people know that I exist. But otherwise it's like,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
difficult thing, but it seems like you found a decent balance of at least being forgiving with yourself, right? If you
yeah.
don't post every other day. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is also, in 2020, I was posting twice a day on each platform. I was going live twice a week on each platform.
Mm,
It was crazy. I was just going mad with all the kind of, because you feel like you're giving a part of your soul to everybody every time you do a live stream kind of thing, and it's just taking a piece of you away. Um, I stopped doing all those live streams, and um, all the content. I was making content, crazy amounts of content. But now if I have to force the content, if I have to go, right, what should I do today? It's not going to come across as authentic. And I think people can feel that. So, for example, I haven't posted on Instagram in about 3 days now. And honestly, I don't care. I'll post when I've got something interesting to say. I post stories, like, oh, this song did this, or it's got this amount of streams, or whatever, to show people I'm still here. But I don't want to just fill my feed with stuff. I want it to be worthwhile.
Yeah. And it does go a long way to have a more earnest delivery, or a more earnest piece of content, right? Out there,
Yes.
because it just falls flat a lot of the time if you're forcing anything. Now,
Yeah.
I have so many things that I want to ask you, and I know we just scratched the surface, but I only got two more to be mindful of your time here. You've spoken about this kind of balance, and preserving sort of like your peace of mind, versus online. But overall, I'm curious of how you set up your routines of writing and preserving that aspect of it, because it's terribly important. And I'm curious if you're a person who has to write every day, or who has to practice every day, or if you feel like you're more at ease saying, okay, I'm going to practice just every other, or what does that routine look like for you to keep working on your skill?
So I don't write every day. I'm one of those people that I can't just sit and go, right, I'm going to write a song about the weather or whatever. I can't. I have to feel like, if I watch a movie and I'm inspired by something, I'll go and do it. It has to be like a spark for me. Um, and in terms of practicing, I do tend to practice vocally at least 4 or 5 times a week. Again, it's different with the voice, because if you overdo it, then you end up
Hmm.
stressing it out. So you've got to be a bit careful, but there's always something, even if it's just a warm up, it will be something vocally, or practicing a lick or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, if I'm sent a specific brief and I know it's got to be, so say someone wants a top line and it's got to be done by 2 days' time, then obviously I'm going to sit down and do it because there's a deadline. But in my own sort of music world, I feel like it has to be a much more natural kind of uh, development that works best for me.
Well, that's good, solid advice, I think. And my last one, of course, is a selfish question, because I love asking people how they define a life well lived in their day to day. I think, not just as an artist
Oh,
and a creative, but as a human being, what are the things that are essential to you to have a life well lived? What are the things that you need to have until your dying days to be an okay life, to be a good life? How do you define that for yourself?
no one's ever asked me that before. That's so interesting. Um, I I think as you get older, you start to realize that you don't actually need that much. You need a family around you, a couple of good friends, a roof over your head, uh, the basic things. And if you're smiling every day and you're able to provide for yourself, and I feel like those kind of things are more important to me now. While there's the side of me that, yeah, wants some success in the music world, it's actually, at the end of the day, in 20, 30 years time, it's not going to matter. It's not in the bigger scheme of things. You really just need to be in a place where you've got love, you've got people around you can trust, and you're happy and you're able to do what you want to do. So I think that's what I'd say.
That's a perfect answer, and it aligns really well with the work that you're bringing into the world. So, Natalie, I want to thank you so much for your time. This has been an absolute pleasure, but I also want to thank you for your music, because it is exactly what you're representing here. This inspiring just resilience to continue to do the work that you feel called to do. And
Thank
it's
you.
it's really great music. It's wonderful, and I hope that you continue to share this gift with us, because it's really good stuff. So it's been a
Thank
joy.
you. It's been so lovely talking to you, and I'm so happy to hear that there are people out there that enjoy my music. So thank you so much.
Well, you just keep going, keep leading the way, but I do hope that we get to chat down the road because again, we're just scratching the surface with a life as varied and exciting as yours. So maybe down the road we can catch up
Oh,
when the next one comes
I'd
out.
love to.
All right. Well, I'll
Thank
let you
you.
enjoy your weekend, but thanks again for all you do, and I'll talk to you real soon.
Thanks,
All right.
Jaime. Bye.
Bye.